During Germany's death throes, Adolf Hitler appointed an unexpected heir, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz. Throughout 20 desperate days in May 1945, a maritime commander, not a field marshal or political leader, controlled the supreme position within a crumbling nation, orchestrating capitulation while countless refugees escaped the closing battle lines. Karl Dönitz entered the world on 16 September 1891 in Grunau, a peaceful neighborhood outside Berlin. His relatives represented Germany's expanding bourgeoisie, and following numerous contemporaries of his generation, he selected a service profession. During April 1910, he joined the Imperial German Navy, an organization continuing to broaden its influence beneath Kaiser Wilhelm II. Dönitz finished cadet instruction and quickly earned his initial significant posting upon the light cruiser SMS Breslau, currently deployed throughout the Mediterranean. When 1914 arrived, bringing the First World War's outbreak, the Breslau alongside its companion vessel Goeben already sailed open waters. Their flight toward Constantinople, followed by handover to the Ottoman Navy, represented among the conflict's earliest days most remarkable maritime movements. For Dönitz, these months delivered lessons in extreme stress missions and intricate international relations. Yet his genuine transformation occurred in 1916, upon transferring to Germany's expanding U-boat branch, a division requiring engineering expertise and unwavering nerve. During January 1918, Dönitz assumed control of UB-68, a shallow water submarine deployed throughout the Mediterranean. His tenure as commander proved brief yet grueling. On 4 October 1918, following technical breakdowns rendering the vessel incapable of submerging, UB-68 faced forced surfacing beneath bombardment from British destroyers. Dönitz directed his personnel to evacuate before the submarine descended. He became captured and remained the conflict's remainder inside a British POW facility. Throughout these months, he composed extensive observations on undersea warfare preliminary theories that would subsequently shape the strategies he implemented during the following conflict. Freed in July 1919, Dönitz returned to a devastated Germany. The Reichsmarine, representing the Weimar Republic's fleet, had suffered reduction to a fragment of its previous power through the Treaty of Versailles. He occupied various headquarters and instructional positions during the 1920s, concentrating on artillery, communications, and vessel management. Though submarines faced prohibition under Versailles, the German fleet persisted in studying them secretly through collaborations and investigations overseas. Personnel like Dönitz stayed discreetly linked to the theories despite official initiatives remaining absent. Throughout the early 1930s, Dönitz had emerged as an esteemed personality inside the Reichsmarine, recognized for strictness, engineering proficiency, and fascination with submarine missions despite official initiatives being prohibited. As Germany commenced rearming beneath Hitler, the fleet sought personnel capable of commanding a reconstructed U-boat arm. Upon Karl Dönitz becoming commander of the submarines, he received a modest undersea division still recovering following years of limitations. Germany controlled merely a handful of functioning U-boats, yet Dönitz possessed a definite strategy, a contemporary submarine fleet constructed upon teamwork, order, and massed assault. He maintained Germany required no fewer than 300 submarines to conduct an efficient maritime operation, substantially exceeding what governing authorities or manufacturing organizers prepared to provide. Dönitz's most significant innovation proved the creation of Rudel tactic, meaning wolf pack strategies. Rather than functioning independently, submarines would scan throughout vast sectors, relay merchant group locations, then reassemble for synchronized nighttime strikes. This necessitated continuous wireless contact and swift judgment from headquarters staff. It equally demanded a sufficiently large fleet to absorb casualties while sustaining tension throughout the Atlantic. Dönitz constructed his philosophy upon velocity, shock, and unified direction, foundations that subsequently characterized the opening years of the Battle of the Atlantic. Upon war's commencement on 1 September 1939, Germany possessed merely 57 U-boats, with less than half prepared for extended-range missions. Notwithstanding the restricted quantities, initial victories granted Dönitz authority inside the Maritime Command. U-boat personnel functioned from established facilities in Wilhelmshaven, Kiel, and Helgoland. Yet France's collapse during June 1940 revolutionized the operation. German armies seized Atlantic harbors including Lorient, Brest, La Rochelle, and Saint-Nazaire, permitting U-boats to access the vast ocean within hours rather than days. These harbors became essential to the U-boat struggle, safeguarded by strengthened submarine shelters constructed to resist aerial bombardment. Dönitz advanced swiftly throughout the hierarchy. He attained Rear Admiral in 1939, Vice Admiral in 1940, and Admiral in 1942. During January 1943, following disputes between Hitler and the veteran maritime commander Erich Rieder, Dönitz succeeded him as Commander-in-Chief of the Kriegsmarine. The designation demonstrated both Hitler's confidence in him and the expanding significance Hitler assigned to submarine conflict. Throughout 1941 and 1942, the U-boat arm achieved what personnel termed the happy time, when merchant groups lacked sufficient escort defense. Yet the circumstances shifted dramatically in 1943. Developments in Allied detection equipment, the cracking of German maritime encryption, enhanced aerial surveillance, and fresh escort carriers substantially raised casualties. Germany forfeited exceeding 70 U-boats during May 1943 alone, a degree of destruction that compelled Dönitz to recall numerous vessels from the North Atlantic. Regardless of these reversals, Dönitz sustained a tight association with Hitler, frequently briefing him personally. He evolved into among the limited senior personnel who preserved the Führer's trust throughout the conflict's closing years. His allegiance and controlled interaction manner contrasted sharply against the internal conflicts that characterized considerable portions of the Nazi command. Though Dönitz subsequently portrayed himself as a non-ideological maritime officer, his wartime history reveals obvious conformity with Nazi thinking. Multiple senior personnel characterized him as intensely faithful to Hitler and approving of National Socialism, and he promoted these beliefs inside the Kriegsmarine. Dönitz enlisted in the Nazi Party during February 1944 and obtained the Golden Party badge subsequently that year. His addresses contained direct anti-Semitic rhetoric. He equally attributed foreign choices to what he termed international Jewish capital. Following 1945, Dönitz rejected political participation and declared he possessed no awareness of the persecution of Jews, yet his public declarations throughout the war demonstrate solid ideological dedication. During the closing hours of April 1945, the Third Reich balanced on the brink of annihilation. Soviet armies encircled Berlin, Allied divisions pushed inward from the west, and German leadership frameworks were disintegrating. Within the Führerbunker, Adolf Hitler composed his political will on 29 April, designating Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz as Reichspräsident, Chief of State, following his demise. Hitler selected him above senior party personalities for motives that mirrored the regime's terminal condition. Dönitz had stayed devoted, evaded internal quarrels, and preserved among the limited military organizations still operating as Germany disintegrated. On 30 April 1945, Hitler perished in Berlin. The information contacted Dönitz that evening at Plön, beside the Baltic shoreline. His initial response was skepticism, yet once the communication was validated, he responded rapidly. He relocated his headquarters northward to the Naval Academy at Murwick, beside Flensburg, where he could function beneath the shelter of surviving maritime divisions. There, he established the temporary Flensburg government, naming Count Lutz Graf Schwerin von Krosigk as leading minister. Though technically a government, it governed practically no genuine land and functioned beneath constant Allied scrutiny. Dönitz confronted an unachievable mission: administer the concluding destruction of Germany while attempting to shield countless civilians and soldiers remaining in the east. His paramount goal throughout these 20 days was to enable the transfer of German refugees and personnel westward to capitulate to the British or Americans instead of falling into Soviet custody. On 4 May 1945, Dönitz sanctioned the limited surrender of German armies in northwest Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Yet this failed to conclude the conflict. Complete capitulation demanded coordinated measures throughout all battlefronts, and Allied commanders clarified that solely an unconditional surrender would be recognized. On 7 May, German delegates headed by General Alfred Jodl signed the surrender documentation at Reims, consenting that all German armies would halt operations on 8 May 1945. Dönitz authorized this, understanding resistance was no longer feasible. A subsequent signing occurred in Berlin-Karlshorst on 8-9 May, ratifying the act for the Soviet Union. The conflict in Europe was concluded. Notwithstanding the surrender, Dönitz attempted to maintain his government operating. The Allies permitted it to function for 2 additional weeks, primarily to sustain administrative continuity in the captured territory surrounding Flensburg. Yet by late May, its existence was deemed unnecessary and politically unacceptable. On 23 May 1945, British armies arrived at the Naval Academy in Moorwick. Personnel entered the conference chamber, notified Dönitz that his government was terminated, and positioned him beneath arrest alongside principal ministers. The final leader of Nazi Germany departed the structure without formality, concluding the brief existence of the Flensburg government. Following his detention on 23 May 1945, Dönitz was conveyed into Allied confinement and shortly became among the principal accused at the International Military Tribunal in Nuremberg. The accusations against him encompassed 2 fundamental areas: culpability for organizing and executing aggressive conflict, and the management of the U-boat operation in breach of international regulation. Prosecutors highlighted his devotion to Hitler, his command position inside the Kriegsmarine, and multiple maritime directives that promoted relentless methods at sea. Among the most examined issues involved orders regarding the rescue of enemy survivors. In 1942, Dönitz had instructed submarine commanders to refrain from rescue missions in hazardous circumstances. Prosecutors asserted this promoted needless loss of life, though Dönitz contended that surfacing endangered U-boats to aerial assault and that comparable practices had been implemented by other fleets. Testimony from U.S. Admiral Chester Nimitz, who outlined similar restrictions on American submarines, became a crucial element. It failed to exonerate Dönitz, but assisted in refining the tribunal's assessment of his conduct as component of wider maritime circumstances instead of deliberate brutality. Nevertheless, the tribunal held him accountable for contributing in the Nazi command's aggressive military strategies. Although acquitted of the accusation that he practiced unrestricted submarine conflict knowingly beyond accepted standards, he was determined guilty on 2 counts and sentenced to 10 years in prison on 1 October 1946. The court observed his profound participation in the Nazi war machine, despite his political power having been more constrained than that of other accused. Dönitz completed his entire sentence at Spandau Prison in Berlin, a compound collectively managed by the 4 occupying authorities. His period there was characterized by rigid schedules, restricted interaction with the external world, and periodic disagreements among the Allied supervisors on prison regulations. Unlike certain other prisoners, he seldom voiced remorse for his wartime choices. He concentrated instead on preserving a disciplined daily framework, reading, writing, and corresponding inside the boundaries permitted. Upon his discharge on 1 October 1956, Dönitz established residence in Omuhol, a tranquil town in Schleswig-Holstein. He returned to public awareness 2 years subsequently with the release of his memoir, Zijn jaar en 20 dagen, 10 years and 20 days. The book depicted his wartime position as that of a committed maritime officer, concentrated on tactics instead of politics. Admirers regarded him as a representation of professional military duty, while detractors maintained that the memoir minimized his devotion to Hitler and disregarded the moral ramifications of the regime he served. Despite following the Nuremberg trials, when the atrocities of the Nazi regime were widely understood, Dönitz persisted in voicing anti-Semitic opinions. In April 1953, he informed Albert Speer that he believed he would already have been discharged from prison if it had been the choice of the Americans and not the Jews. This statement made obvious that his perspectives had not altered, despite in the years following the conflict. Karl Dönitz expired on 24 December 1980 at age 89. His funeral attracted several hundred former maritime personnel, yet no official military tributes were authorized, mirroring Allied apprehensions about symbolism. His legacy remained split: a capable maritime strategist, a dedicated officer, and the concluding leader of a defeated regime. If you found this video insightful, like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell for more WWII Documenta. Thanks for watching.